degrees. It's not really cold now.
Poco frio.
Sí.
Okay, so I think it's, let's see, we have 1 minute before we begin, so you don't have to start recording until 1 minute. Otherwise. So welcome everyone. Oh, it's being live streamed now. In any case, then I'll start. So today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 9, Most Confidential Knowledge, text number 15 to 18. So those who would like to follow along, they can. I'll start with the Sanskrit. Translations available. Agnihotra, is the translation going on now?
Да, я только что, да, все включено.
Lavangalati Lata Devidas Esta is this?
Mataji Lavanga tut, and we hear Lavangalata in Russian,
Okay.
everything okay.
Okay. So Jnana Jagnina Chapyanye Ijando Mamupasate Ekatvena Pritakvena Bahuda Vishvato Mukam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. So Prabhupada's purport. This verse is a summary of the previous verses. The Lord tells Arjuna that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and do not know anything other than Krishna are called Mahatma. Yet there are other persons who are not exactly in the position of Mahatma, but who worship Krishna also in different ways. Some of them have already been described as the distressed, the financially destitute, the inquisitive, and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But there are others who are still lower, and these are divided into three. He who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that, and three, he who accepts the universal form, the Vishvarupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships that. And of the above three, the lowest, those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, are the most prominent. Such people think themselves to be the Supreme Lord, and in this mentality, they worship themselves. This is also a type of God worship. So they can understand that they are not the material body, but actually spirit soul. At least such a sense is prominent. Generally, the impersonalists worship the Supreme Lord in this way. The second class includes the worshippers of the demigods, those who by imagination consider any form to be the form of the Supreme Lord. And the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism or entity and worship that. The universe is also a form of the Supreme Lord. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Siddharane. These verses are a continuation of Krishna's explanation to Arjuna about different kinds of people who worship Krishna. Previously, Krishna had mentioned that those who are mudhas, they never take to Krishna's worship. He said, Abhijananti mam mudha manushim tanum ashritya. That those who are foolish, they deride Krishna when he comes to the material world, and they say that he's just an ordinary person, because they cannot conceive of a person who can control the infinite and the minute. And therefore they conclude that such a person could not possibly exist. But Krishna said that such persons, that their hopes of liberation, their fruitive activities, and the cultivation of knowledge cannot be successful. Because what is the ultimate purpose of our lives? The ultimate purpose of our lives is to become happy and peaceful. And in different ways, we're trying. Just like those who are materialists, generally speaking, they're having conferences to find out where happiness is. Every week, I'm invited to another online conference to discuss another health issue or see presentations on experts from diabetes to pulmonary problems, cancer. So people are very much concerned about the problems of the material world, the miseries. As we all know that there are three miseries: adi-daivik, adi-bodhik, and adi-kleshik miseries. And they're always inflicting harm or problems upon all living entities in this material world. Indeed, these miseries are there for a purpose. Krishna did not just create these miseries because he had nothing better to do, and he decided to put a whole lot of souls into the material world and experiment, like a scientist does experiments nowadays with guinea pigs, and see what would happen if he put all these souls in the material world and threw in a few miseries, how they respond to it all. This is not exactly what the material world is meant for. Of course, for those who have a false ego, which means everyone in the material world, there's that tendency to blame God for everything. Anything that goes wrong, one thinks that God must be the cause of it. As I mentioned many times, there was one rabbi, his name was Krishna, Rabbi Krishna, spelled slightly different. But he was explaining why in this material world, bad things happen to good people. As he explained, that God is actually a nice person. Unfortunately, he's so old now, being the oldest person, he's become senile. And because he's senile, therefore he cannot remember who's good and who's bad. And therefore, sometimes good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. But the rumor is that the angels have had a conference and they decided that it was about time for God to retire, and that hopefully in the future, one of the younger angels would take over, and therefore things would go on properly again. So this is the way many materialists see the material world, as a place where innocent souls have come and they're unfairly being treated by the material energy in the attempt to try to become happy, peaceful, forever. But this is called lack of knowledge, and therefore Krishna calls such people mudhas, or fools, because they don't understand things properly. And therefore, although they may become very expert at gaining money, of course, money doesn't mean just pieces of paper that you accumulate. that tomorrow may be worth nothing. As we know in Germany, when by Krishna's arrangement, by the karma of the people there at one time in the 1920s or the 30s, then they began printing up money in order to pay their debts to the countries that defeated them in the war. And they printed so much money because they had so much debts that their money became so worthless that they couldn't buy anything with it. As a matter of fact, to buy one loaf of bread, you'd have to take a wheelbarrow worth of money. In other words, you'd have a wheelbarrow and you'd have to put so much money on the wheelbarrow and go to the store to try to buy some bread. But when people got to the store, they couldn't take all the money out at one time because there's so much necessary to buy a loaf of bread. They take half of it or a quarter of it and go into the store to buy to start piling money up on the counter so they could buy the bread. But when they took their first half or first quarter of the money into the store, people would come and steal. But they didn't steal the money. They took the money out of the wheelbarrow and put it on the ground, and they stole the wheelbarrow because the wheelbarrow was worth much more than the money was. So now people may print up some pieces of paper because they don't know what real value is, what real money is, what real wealth is. According to our Srimad Bhagavatam, that real wealth is land and cows. But because people are destroying the land and they're killing the cows, therefore they're actually poverty-stricken in every sense of the term. They don't have clean air, they don't have clean water, they don't have pure food, they don't have proper relationships, and therefore they're actually bankrupt, they're poverty-stricken. Although they may be imagining that they're filling their bellies up with something, and therefore, as it says in Spanish, barriga llena, corazón contento. Although their stomach is full, they think, therefore they think their heart is satisfied. But actually, everyone is feeling lacking in the material world, in distress. So these material miseries are sent because people don't want to follow God's laws. And the more they don't follow God's laws, no matter how much they may make a show of economic development, creating things out of plastic and metal, still they're bankrupt. They may have billions of dollars, but they can't even eat properly. So their hopes for fruitive activities, their cultivation of knowledge, big universities, giving all kinds of teaching students all kinds of ignorance, not knowledge, but foolish ideas about who we are and what the purpose of life is. Therefore, they're called andaya tandir upigiyamanas tetisha tantra urudami bara. They're called blind. These so-called leaders, they're all blind. At least if one was a cow or an ass and you asked them a question and they gave their answer, at least you'd know you didn't understand what they were talking about. If you ask a cow, my dear cow, who am I? And he answered, moo, moo. At least you understand that the cow didn't quite understand your question, and that he probably, even if he understood it, he probably couldn't give the proper answer because he himself doesn't know it. But if you ask the so-called learned scholars nowadays, who am I? They won't say moo, they'll give elaborate answers that mean less than nothing. One was probably better off asking a cow than asking so-called learned scholars about the real goal of life. Therefore, the cultivation of knowledge, the fruit of activities, and their hopes of liberation. People nowadays think liberation means the weekend. They're liberated from working. and they consider home. They're liberated from their work, and they think liberation is sitting on a couch, drinking some beer, and watching people in a football game, kicking a ball around. They think that's liberation. Therefore, they don't know what liberation is, they don't know what knowledge is, and they don't know how to live properly even in the material world as a human being. They think life is meant for just struggling. But then Krishna mentions that there are other people, Mahatmanas tumam parata, daivim prakritim ashritya, bhajanyananya manaso gyathabhutidim aviyam. Others who are actually more than just human beings, but they're actually human beings. They're called Mahatmas, great souls. So what makes a person a great soul? Prabhupada would always point out that even in India, people thought, they think so many people are great souls. They give them the title of Mahatma, although they themselves are in ignorance. I think someone has to mute. Someone's not muted, I think. Anyway, we're having a piano recitation. What to do? Agnihotra, someone has not muted themselves. Okay. So these Mahatmas are not some person who's interested in liberating people from some materialistic influence, like the British were, the Indians were liberated from England at some time, and therefore the person who helped them achieve such a liberation is called a Mahatma. But actually, a great soul is one who's actually under the internal energy of Krishna. One who's actually surrendered to Krishna, and therefore Krishna takes him into the spiritual family, and one wakes up to one's spiritual identity in relation to Krishna, and therefore in the fire of pure love and devotion, one regains one's original position in the spiritual world. Such a soul is called a great soul. He joins the other great souls in the spiritual world, on the spiritual level of consciousness. And what is the example? What are the activities of the great souls? Sadatam kirtayanto mam idante mam dridavrataha. Sadatam kirtayanto mam itantas. Sadatam kirtayanto mam. Always chanting my holy name. Namaskar Tramam Bhakta Nityukta Upasate. Sadatam kirtayanto mam itantas chadrida vrataha. Namaskantaya naman bhakta nityukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls, they worship me with devotion. Now people will laugh that these people are wasting their time worshiping God. They're so foolish, they actually sit around and they chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. They think people were chanting just like they used to chant. They had a club called the Mickey Mouse Club from Walt Disney. And children used to sit around chanting Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. So people think we're chanting Hare Krishna is the same thing as chanting Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. These people are so foolish, they have nothing else to do. They have no brains, and therefore all they could do is repeat the same. They only know 3 words. They've lost all their intelligence when they join the Hare Krishna movement. And there's nothing left in their heads but 3 words: Hare Krishna and Ram. And therefore, every time you ask them a question about what the solution to the problems of the world are, all they can say is Hare Krishna. And once in a while they say Hare Ram, just to throw in another point of view. They don't understand what the material, they don't understand what spiritual life is. They don't understand that there's an existence beyond birth, death, old age, and disease, beyond the miseries of material existence. They think the purpose of life is to solve the problems, to simply struggle against material existence. And therefore, this idea, Sadatam Kirtayanto Mam, always chanting my name, or Itantas Chad Drida Vrataha, or to serve God who they don't believe exists. Namaschantas Shimam Bhaktya, and to become humble, this is the worst thing that they can conceive of. It's all right, you may chant whatever you want. Nowadays they have tech music, and people just chant the same thing over and over again. So that's all right. People can accept that. And being busy all the time, running here and there, doing something, they can accept. But bowing down before God, oh, this is revolting. This is degrading. This is on the level of the Aborigines. This cannot be done. This is something that should be outlawed. Other people who do it should be punished because they're setting a bad example. And therefore, in one country, when they were declaring who was a cult, they declared the Hare Krishna movement as one of the 10 principal cults in the movement in the country. And they outlined 2 reasons why they thought the Hare Krishna movement was a dangerous cult. Matter of fact, one of the top 10 most dangerous cults in the country. The first one was that they're vegetarians. Could you imagine that? People being vegetarians? How dangerous. The second is they had the nerve to go on the street and chant the names of God, contaminate the whole atmosphere. And they were observed that sometimes they even bowed down. So degrading, so humiliating. So people, their whole endeavor in the material world is not to bow down before God, to become God. And therefore, the Hare Krishna movement, this idea of coming under the spiritual energy, they can't, what to speak of believing, they cannot accept it, that anyone could do it. Just like Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, what is the best thing you've learned in school? After being trained up by Sunda and Amarika, 2 demoniac teachers, Hiranyakashipu expected his son to be well educated in the principles of demonism. But Prahlad Maharaj had good association because Narada Muni had taught him Krishna conscious philosophy even while he was in the womb. So he gave his father an unrespected reply. He said, my dear father, the best thing I've learned in school is that you're a #1 fool. Nasado manye Surya Deva, Tatsado manye Suryavarya Dehinam. Oh, best of the demons. Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear father, you're not an ordinary demon, you're the biggest demon. Somehow or another, Hiranyakashipu understood the mood of Prahlad Maharaj, and he didn't accept it as a compliment. That, my dear father, you're not just a little common, ordinary demon, you're the biggest demon. But then Prahlad Maharaj said, Tat sadhamanye suryavarya de sadasumu vigna dhyama satprihat. That I can see you're always in anxiety. You're claiming to be the ruler of this universe, or potentially, but you're full of anxiety. You're always suffering. What kind of ruler are you? Why should I listen to you? My aim is to become happy, and you're miserable. So what do you have to teach me? That sadhamanye swaryavarya deyinam sada subudvigna dhyama sakraha. Your intelligence is obviously not very clear, because if your intelligence was clear, you know how to become happy, and you be happy. But I see you're always in misery. You're always drinking these strong liquors. You're always intoxicated. You can't tolerate anything. You get so angry if prasadam is 10 minutes late, you just go berserk. So what kind of person are you? Sadasamu dhyama sakraha. Hidvatma kritam griha anda kupam. I think you should just get out of this demoniac mentality and go to Vrindavan and chant Hare Krishna. Vanam gato yad dharim ashriyeta. So Hiranyakashipu cannot accept that because he was a demon. So there are many demons in this Kali Yuga, and there's a process of changing people from being a demon to a devotee. Unfortunately, in this age, people will find it difficult to actually cultivate the knowledge necessary to understand things properly. People are short-lived. Their memories are very poor, etc., etc. So it is recommended that people chant Hare Krishna in this age. Now, there are others who don't chant Hare Krishna, and they have some idea of spirit. They're not very advanced in spiritual knowledge, but they're not 100% they're not 100% uncontrolled. They have some idea that they should control their mind. They should cultivate some knowledge. As it says in Bhagavad Gita, Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. They understand that their problems are being free from attachment, fear, and anger. They know that these are problems, their attachments, their fear, and their anger, and therefore they want to adopt some philosophy or some mechanism to get free from these problems. But because they're not very intelligent, therefore they don't know, Nite vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu, that the actual method to get free from these problems is to take shelter of Krishna, of Vishnu. But they don't do that because they're attached, or they're fearful, or they're vita attachment, or they're frustrated. They're angry all the time. And therefore their actual intelligence has been minimized or taken away. But such persons are described in this verse, Jnana Jagnana Chapyanye Yajanto Mamupasate Ekatvena Pritakvena Buhuda Vishvato Mukam. That there's some opportunity for them, although they don't take up the process of devotional service, to at least adopt another vision other than gross animalistic mentality. They're not 100% in the mode of ignorance, although they may be close to it. So they're described here as anye, as others. They worship the absolute truth in 3 different ways. So in the material world, there's always first class, second class, and third class. Just like there are the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. So there's always these 3 classes in the material world. So similarly, for those who are not accepting the mode of devotional service, they can also be, and they don't accept the process as Krishna has outlined as Chatura Vida Bhajante Mam, Jana Sukritina Arjuna, that 4 kinds of pious men approach Krishna, namely those who are distressed, those who are seeking material comfort, those who are inquisitive, and those who want knowledge of how to get free from all material problems by liberation. So they're not even on that level, as Krishna had described earlier in the 7th chapter, but still they have some desire to worship the absolute truth. They just don't know who the absolute truth is. Just like Gajendra, he did not know who the absolute truth was, but he knew he had quite a serious problem on his foot that none of the doctors could figure out how to solve, how to get the alligator off of it. So after some time, he understood that there must be someone who's qualified to take care of my alligator problem. And therefore he prayed to that someone, whoever it might be, to come and help him. And indeed, Krishna accepted his prayer. And of course, because Gajendra was pious in his previous lifetime, he was King Indradumya, and therefore he remembered that prayer that he had offered when he was worshiping Krishna previously. Therefore, Krishna came and saved him. But there are others who are not even on that platform, although they're in distress, they have so many problems, etc. They don't know who God is, but they at least accept there must be a God and they worship him. Now, even below that is these 3 classes of people. The first one is they worship themselves. As Krishna says here, they're known as there are other, they can conceive this ekakvena mamupas, pritakvena bahuda vishruto. So they're known as ekakvena. They worship that everyone is God, that I'm God, ahangra pasanam, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's true. In other words, their worship is not entirely wrong because everything is part and parcel of God, and therefore everything is actually God, and therefore in one sense they are God. The only problem is that they think that they're supreme God. They don't know that they're God, they're part and parcel of God, just like gold. A particle of gold is also gold, but a particle of gold is not the whole gold mine, it's just a particle of gold. So to take the particle of gold is correct, but to take the particle of gold as the whole gold mine is lack of understanding, proper understanding. So if we study ourselves, we'll find out that we're God. The only difference is quantitatively we're very small, but qualitatively we're the same as God. So that's one class of people. They're known as ahangrapasana. They worship themselves as God. So the next is called pritakvena. Pritakvena means can you see who's unmuted? Who's ever unmuted, please mute. Nirguna, are you muted? Nirguna, you have to mute. The next is called pritakvena. Pritakvena means pantheism. Their opinion is that there are different forms of God. Generally speaking, they worship the demigods. They think that God is everywhere, or different forms of God. They think that there's no denying the fact that God is everywhere, but they don't understand that everything is simultaneously one and different from God. Just like a molecule of the sun, molecules of the sun may be everywhere, but there's an original source of those molecules, the sunshine. The sun and the sunshine are simultaneously one and different, and there's no difference, there's no harm in saying that God is everywhere, because his energies are everywhere. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, that Maya Tatamidam Sarvam Jagat Avyaktamurtina. Although I'm pervading everywhere in this universe by my energy, still I'm not there. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example that a very big man may have many factories, and his energies are working in those factories, but he himself is not personally present in the factory. Although everything is going on by his will, still he's not necessarily present in each and every factory. So similarly, God, Parasya Shaktira Vividaiva Shuyate, is the fact that everywhere his energies are working, but that doesn't mean that he himself is personally present there. Nor does it mean that he's not a person. Just because his energies are working doesn't mean he's lost himself. It's not that the owner of the factory, because everything is going on under his direction by his energies, that he's lost himself in the factory. Similarly, Krishna, he's expanded himself everywhere by his energies, but he's still in Goloka Vrindavan, enjoying with Srimati Radharani and his associates there. So simply to study the sunshine is not to study the complete sun. Similarly, the third, Vishvato Mukha, this means that you worship the universal form of Krishna. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, we have the universal form, which will be displayed in a subsequent chapter. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, for instance, the universal form is described in many places, including the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the hills are the bones of God, the vegetation are like hairs on the body of God, the ocean is the navel of God, the highest planet, Swargaloka, Brahmaloka, is the head of God, and the lowest planet, Patalaloka, is the lower part of the foot of God, the soul of God. So this is called universal form. So someone prefers the universal form, someone likes to worship themselves, someone worships the demigods. But they're better, Krishna says, than those who are simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, who are just like animals. Generally, these three classes of persons, they're impersonalists. And as we can see, impersonalism is quite prevalent in modern society, that even amongst those who claim to be worshipers of God, or even in India, they see the Murti of Krishna and they think that they're the Murti. As I mentioned before, at one Sunday feast, I was talking to one lady and she was just glorifying Krishna. And she was explaining how she has a deity of Krishna and that she worships him every day. So I was quite surprised. She didn't seem to be such a devotional person. And then gradually or later on, she told me that actually she is Krishna and that one day she'll realize that she's the deity. So this is not uncommon. Even in the land, when people claim to be bhaktas, oftentimes they think that they themselves are going to realize that they're God eventually. When Gopal Bhatt was actually Raghunath Bhatt, Goswami, his parents were very devotional. They were pure devotees. His uncle was Prabodhananda Saraswati. Venkata Bhatt was his father. And so Raghunath Bhatt, Goswami, Chaitanya Maharaj told him he should go home and take care of his parents in their old age because they were great devotees. He did that, and after they passed away, he decided to go back and join Chaitanya Maharaj at Jagannath Puri. But on the way, because generally pilgrims in those times didn't go by themselves, because there were many bandits and robbers on the way, so they go in groups. So in the group that he went with, there was one devotee. His name was Ram Das. So Ram Das, day and night, he chanted the name of Ram. And when he was traveling to Jagannath Puri, then on the way, he was serving Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. Raghunath Bhatt Goswami was a Brahmin, but he didn't want to accept the service of a devotee such as Ram Das, who was chanting day and night the name of Ram. He thought he must be a great devotee. It would be improper for me to take service from such an advanced devotee. When they arrived at Jagannath Puri, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami went to visit Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see him. Later on, Raghunath Bhatt suggested to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he invite Ram Das, who was a great devotee, to come and see him and have his darshan. His secretary, Sri Damodar, invited Ram Das to come. And when Ram Das visited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't pay him very much attention, didn't take him very seriously, because although Ram Das was chanting Ram, 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 Ram Das thought he was actually Ram, and that he was chanting to himself. He was glorifying himself by chanting Ram. So although he was chanting Ram, he was actually an impersonalist. So this is not uncommon nowadays. People claim that they're servants of God, but actually they think God, ultimately, in the practical sense, they think that their body is God and that they're their body. Still, those who are like animals and they have no God worship whatsoever are on the lowest platform, and those who believe that they're God are at least on a higher platform because they recognize that there is a God, even if it may be themselves. So those who are impersonalists, they prefer these three processes: worshiping themselves as God, worshiping the universal form, worshiping the demigods. So this is also accepted because later on they may come to the real knowledge of who actually is God. They're at least following the Vedic culture. As I mentioned before, Srila Prabhupada was in Calcutta during the Durga Puja. And during the Durga Puja, there are many ceremonies that go on. They slaughter many, many goats. It's not a very happy time for the goat family. And they have big worship of Durga Devi, and they're blasting music. Of course, it's mundane music from their big speakers. So much music, so loud the music is that you can't even hear yourself think. But the devotees were wondering that here we have these demigod worshippers of Mother Durga, and yet we have, on the other hand, we have the other types of religious workers, the Christians, the Muslims, etc. So at least they seem to believe that there's some kind of God, but these people are worshiping Durga, the material energy, as supreme. So which is better? So Prabhupada's answer was surprising, at least to me. His answer was that actually the worshippers of Durga are better. Because although the worship of Durga is materialistic, they're asking, my dear Mother Durga, please give me this, or please give me that, give me a wife, give me a house, give me a color TV, Om Jagadisha Hari. So though they're worshiping God or the demigods for some materialistic purpose, still they're in the line of the Vedic culture. And by good association, eventually, because they've accepted the Vedic culture to one degree or another, they have the greatest opportunity to make some advancement to understand the higher parts of the Vedic culture. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that if a boy is 10 years old or something, whatever, and the father says, my dear son, if you pass your 8th grade class, then we'll make you a magistrate. Now the boy may not want to study very much, but when he hears that he can become a magistrate means a judge. If he passes his 8th grade studies, then he becomes inspired to do it. Sometimes when someone is sick, the child is sick, the parents tell the child, my dear child, that if you take this medicine, then I'll give you a sweet. So this is just to encourage the child to take the medicine. And then after taking the medicine, the child says, where's the sweet? Oh, I can't find it. I'll look for it. It's not here. Just now coming. So the whole thing is just encouragement so that one can make progress. Therefore, in the Vedic scriptures, some encouragement is there to worship yourself as God, or to worship the demigods, or to worship the universal form. But this is just encouragement so that one can be on the path towards understanding Krishna. Now that may take some time. As Krishna says, Bonam Janmanamante, Jnanamam Prabhajate. If one takes that to that path, it may take many, many lifetimes to reach perfection, to gradually come to a higher and higher stage. And therefore, Krishna doesn't recommend that. He recommends that you simply take Bhakti-amam Abhijananti, that if you want to understand the absolute truth, then take to devotional service. But some people won't do that. And therefore, the indirect path is recommended to them. So they can understand, as it explains in the other parts, in the subsequent parts of what Krishna was saying, that aham kratur, aham jagna, swaraham, aham oshadam, mantraham, aham evajam, aham agnir, aham hutam. That I am the paraphernalia for sacrifice, for yajna. I'm the fire. I'm everything. So that's true. That if one hears this and understands how everything is Krishna, then gradually one will make advancement towards pure Krishna consciousness. That he's the Pitaham Asya Jagato Mata Data Pitamaha. That Krishna is the mother, he's the father. He's the Supreme Father. And he's the mother. The father gives the seed, and the mother develops the child. So Krishna says that he's the seed-giving father of all living entities. Or as Prabhupada also points out, that in this material world, everyone has a father and mother, and everyone's father and mother had a father and mother. And everyone's father and mother also had a father and mother. So the ultimate conclusion is that all our fathers and mothers, all our grandparents or great-grandparents, they were all persons. If we trace our ancestry far enough back, then we should find that our original father and mother were also persons. How can we conclude that out of nothing, personality has come? If out of nothing personality has come, then why don't more people come out of nothing? Why do people come from other people? Why don't they just come out of nothing? Where is the example of someone coming out of nothing? If you ask any gentleman or lady, who is your parents? If they're a saint, they wouldn't say, I just popped out of nothing. It wouldn't be showing very much intelligence. Are you sure you don't have, what's your last name? I don't have, my last name is Void. My mother was Mrs. Void, and my father was Mr. Void. So there is a void. It's the void of intelligence, is the way people think like that. That's where the void is. The void is between their two ears. People who think like that. Therefore, one should understand that Krishna is the original father, Bijamam Sarvabhutanam. That Krishna says, I'm the original secret-giving father, and our mother is the material nature. So all these different kinds of worship, whether it be of the country or of our body or whatever else, this is also kind of worship. It's worship of the material nature, of mother. But we should also recognize the father. And if we want to find out who the father is, then we have to ask the mother. And the mother, the Vedas, where everything comes, all the knowledge comes from, says that Krishna is our father. We may not realize Krishna is the father, but those who have developed faith in the Vedas, then gradually they'll have faith that Krishna is the father, because that's what the Vedas say. So by taking to this indirect path, gradually people develop faith in the Vedas, and as they develop faith in the Vedas, they come to understand who their original father is. So the impersonalists, generally they have 5 stages of development, of evolution. They have 5 stages of worship. First one is called the Saktas, those who worship the material nature. And then it progresses towards Ganapatya, Surya, Shaiva, and finally Vaishnava. So this worship of the material nature is also an impetus and an encouragement to take to the path where one will gradually gain knowledge, Ganapatya, understand the source of everything, Surya, the original father of the universe, Shiva, and then one may come to find out that Shiva is the greatest of all the devotees. Aradanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samatra. That Lord Shiva is telling us, the mother of the material universe, Parvati, that the best kind of worship is to worship Vishnu. And when one accepts Lord Shiva and actually becomes his follower and goes deeply into Lord Shiva's philosophy, then one will take up the worship of Krishna. So therefore, the conclusion is that we may declare ourselves to become God or being God, but we may be God in one sense, but what kind of God are we? To an ant, we appear to be God. Certainly in the association of an ant, the ant must pay us respects because compared to the ant, we're God. But compared to the real God, who are we? The real God, he lifted Govardhan Hill with one pinky, his left pinky, and held it up for 7 days and nights. So we may be claimed to be God, but what can we lift? 100 pounds, 100 kilos? Can we lift 100 kilos? What to speak of a hill weighing millions, thousands and thousands of kilos? So we may encourage ourselves thinking we're God, but we should understand what kind of God we are. So we should go further and further until we discover who the real God is, who the supreme God is. And if we do that, as we take to the process of discovering our relation with God, then we'll actually get what we're looking for, namely complete knowledge, which can give us realization of our eternal nature and eventually unlimited happiness. Therefore, one should come to the last point of knowledge. Vasudeva Saramiti Saramahatma Sudulabha. That if you want to be a rare, great soul, you have to come to the ultimate knowledge. That is that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. And then one's life becomes perfect. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. We'll start with Nitya Seva Devi Dasi.
Hi Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gurudev, you were speaking about this Durga Puja, that at least they are worshipping a demigod. So I was actually in Navadip some time back, and I did not know there was Durga Puja that day. So me and my friend, we just went to Navadip, and we had no idea about this Durga Puja. And so there was this pandal everywhere, like the whole Navadip was covered with this pandal of Durga Puja. And so I'm just saying that, speaking of, at least they're worshipping the demigod, but then they had these how do you say, like this whole group, people were like, in groups and dancing and chanting the name of Mother Durga, and then the whole streets were covered with this, and but they were actually drunk. And it was, when there is a celebration, generally people are happy and enjoying that celebration, but then their celebration didn't seem like a celebration, although they had these devotional music going on. But then their celebration was more like I shouldn't say, a bit like demoniac, because they were all drunk, and then the way they were dancing and everything. So yeah, I'm just thinking, how is that the right approach to,
No, you should teach them what the right approach is, how to properly worship Durga. Otherwise, they may never learn.
I don't know. I can't teach them.
Anyhow, what can we do? Rather than criticize them, we should, first of all, we have our process of chanting Hare Krishna. So we have to perfect that process. And then we may, if we're become powerful and following our process, some people who are more advanced amongst their group may become attracted to take up our process. But our goal of life is not to help them, encourage them to perfect their process of worshiping Mother Durga, nor is it to criticize it, because at least they're doing something in the line which may eventually bring them to a higher platform of consciousness. So to criticize improper worship will not be very valuable. And since we're not going to take the time to instruct them on the proper process of worshiping Durga, we should just accept it, that this is people's karma, and we wish them best. And for those who are receptive, we teach them our process, and we try to follow our process as well as best we can, so we become more powerful, more effective in giving people our process, which we understand is the best process.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Sorry, there was one more question. Sorry, if you don't mind. You were saying about the qualities of Krishna, but he has that we are same in the qualities, but I read in Krishna book that he has 64 qualities. But we don't have 64 qualities.
Sorry about that.
I mean, we don't have 64 qualities, so I'm just wondering
we have,
why.
Generally, we have the same qualities as Krishna, not all of them. We're qualitatively equal to him. Just like the son is qualitatively equal to the father because he came from the father, but he doesn't have all the qualities of the father. He's simultaneously one but different. So Krishna is unique. He has unlimited qualities. Each one of those qualities that we have, he has unlimitedly, and he has qualities that we don't have. We're still qualitatively one with him. Just like the speck of gold is qualitatively equal to the gold mine, but there's a big difference between the gold mine and the speck of gold. And in any case, it's just an analogy. It's not perfect. Generally speaking, it says that the soul has potentially 50 qualities that Krishna has in minute quantity and Krishna has those qualities in complete fullness. And then the liberated souls have another 5 qualities in minute quantity, and Krishna has them in fullness. And then Krishna has another 10 qualities in fullness that neither the liberated nor the conditioned souls have, even in a small amount.
Thank you.
Anything else? Did you have a question, Tirthapad?
Yes, Gurudev. Just I heard that you were on the move again, and I'm wondering if you could share with us something of your itinerary.
On Monday, Krishna willing, then I'm going to Radhadesh in Belgium. And I'll be there for a week until the 20th of December, when I'll go to New Brajamandala in Spain. And then on Christmas Day here in Europe, then I travel to New York until the, I think it's the 12th of January, when I'll go and visit Ananta Devi Dasi and her father, Chutananda, in Orlando. And then I'll go to Alachua on the weekend, and then come back to Belgium, to Radhadesh, on the, I believe this 13th of January. And then I'll come back to Slovenia on the 17th. And I believe Kumari Devi Dasi and her husband Janardhan will join me in New York for a couple of weeks. Isn't that right, Kumari Devi Dasi? Yes. Is that right? And Andaryami, did you have a question?
Dear Gurudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you very much for your lecture. Пожалуйста, вдохновите нас. Я поздравляю вас и всех преданных с марафоном Шрилы Прабхупады и прошу от вас некоего вдохновения, потому что мы год как переехали из Москвы сюда, и вроде бы мы активно участвуем в программах нашей ятры проповеднических, их довольно-таки много, они позволяют держаться в достаточно хорошей форме. Но вот я могу сравнить и сказать, что год назад я приехал сюда также, застав марафон Прабхупады здесь, и было гораздо больше вдохновения, рвения выходить на улицу с книгами Прабхупады, ну, в общем, участвовать в распространении. А сейчас, несмотря на то, что достаточно много программ, повторюсь, простите, и активности с преданными, но такого рвения меньше. Прошу вас, как-нибудь вдохновите, пожалуйста, или прокомментируйте.
Okay. Do we have translation? Anihotra, want to translate?
Guru Maharaj, please give a blessing and give blessings and give inspiration for marathon of Srila Prabhupada in this December. Antaryami Prabhu have more inspiration 1 year ago, and not so many inspiration to marathon of Srila Prabhupada this year. Please give blessings and inspire him to distribute Srila Prabhupada books.
Not only me, maybe all devotees.
By Krishna's arrangement, we have some special times, some special festivals. We have Radhastami and Janmashtami and Govardhan Puja, just to inspire us to do something extra. The nature of the material nature generally puts us into complacency or some other mode of material nature. And therefore, some special time is there to help us get out of our complacency and do something special for Krishna that will please him and therefore help advance our devotional service and help the society in general, which is obviously people are suffering due to lack of knowledge. We're all, even the most unfortunate of us, amongst us, we know at least we're eternal and that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that there's a purpose to all our suffering. But people in general are in ignorance. They don't even know that they're eternal. They don't know that there's a Supreme Person. They don't know that their suffering has a purpose to inspire them to get out of their suffering by surrendering to Krishna. And therefore, Srila Vyasadeva has given us these literatures that Srila Prabhupada has presented to us in a way that's understandable to the people in Kali Yuga. Therefore, it's our duty to distribute this information to others, because that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come. That's why he takes his associates come to this material world to distribute this information to end the suffering of the conditioned souls, especially now in Kali Yuga, which is most acute. One second, come in. So, as if we can take some time, our time, and serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by going on Harinam and book distribution, at least if no other time of the year, if we become inspired in this time of the year to do something extraordinary and give our little, whatever effort we can give to helping ourselves and others receive this gift of transcendental knowledge, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will bless us, and maybe we can do something to help this miserable, distressed world, especially if it's not evident now how miserable and distressed it is. We can only look forward to the future where it'll become more and more clear that this is not our home for us, and it's not the home for anyone else here. So let's go and do whatever we can to distribute this knowledge and save ourselves. And if we can save some other conditioned souls, then Srila Prabhupada, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Panchatattva, they'll give us all their blessings. And if we benefit no one else, at least we'll benefit ourselves. So thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing you again. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Yusha Marathon ki jai.
Jai.
Anande, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Ogoy se Prahladananda Maharaj ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Krishna 11.12.2021.mp4.
Hare Krishna.